If you haven't watched part 1 of the story, please do that first because it includes a warning that I'm going to talk about some pretty graphic stuff. Instead of being sent to prison for killing 4 of her 5 children with an axe, Mary Ward was instead sent to the Utica Lunatic Asylum. Treatment for mental health issues in 1856 was almost non-existent. Electroshock therapy and lobotomies weren't done until the 1930s, but what they did do involved long forced ice baths, bloodletting, and purgatives to rid the body of unwanted emotions. Today, the asylum has a different name, of course, and they still do have her records, but because of patient confidentiality, they can't tell us what treatments Mary received while there, but I'm sure they were awful. However, after just 3 years, Mary was listed as cured and released back to her husband, Lot, who apparently was okay with taking her back. Meanwhile, he had gotten married to another woman named Elizabeth while Mary was in the asylum. Mary continues to be listed as his wife on census records, but Elizabeth, even though she was his wife also, was listed as a domestic servant, and she and Mary were about the same age. While the 3 of them were reported to have lived quite harmoniously together, the other person living in the house with them was their only surviving child, the now 11-year-old Charles, who had witnessed his mother murder his siblings, given a statement against her in court, heard her say she regretted not killing him too, and now lived with her again. In 1869, 13 years after the murders, his father Lot was arrested and pled guilty for public intoxication, and almost 10 years later, in December of 1878, 2 boys, aged 14 and 15, were visitors to the Ward home. Lot owned a cider mill at that time and proceeded to drink 2.5 gallons of hard cider with them. The boys were understandably very drunk by the time they left Lot's house and froze to death on their walk to check their hunting traps. To make matters worse, the older brother of the 15-year-old was incredibly sick with a fever, and upon hearing of his brother's death, they worried that he would die from the shock. Lot was never charged with their deaths. So what happened to the Ward family? Well, in 1880, Lot's second wife Elizabeth passed away, but there must be a mistake on her headstone that says she was 30 when she would have been closer to 50 instead. Mary would die after considerable suffering from the effects of a cancer at age 63 in 1892, 36 years after killing her kids. Her obituary also said she was a hard-working, industrious woman and respected by all. Both of Lot's wives are buried near the 4 children, and Lot joined them in 1905, dying at age 80 from pneumonia, but he doesn't appear to have a headstone. And what happened to their son Charles, who escaped being murdered? Well, he ended up having a family in nearby Chittenango, but they have an interesting story as well that I'll share soon.